People.
The suffering and strength blacks experienced in American slavery comes to life in this literature. From Phyllis Wheatley, whose 1773 book was the first authored by an African American, to Booker T. Washington, whose work and writing attempted to heal America after slavery. The most powerful writing of this period is that of Frederick Douglass.
Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies in the course of his career. The first in 1845, called simply The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. A second in 1855, called My Bondage and My Freedom. And a third, late in life, when Douglass was an elder statesman, a man very much a citizen of the world, called The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass.
This is a unique human being, period, who happened to have been born a slave, who transcended his moorings, his environment in all sorts of ways.
In each of these volumes, Douglass underscores the importance of literacy in his life.
He learned to read and write when he was very young by some happenstance, planned happenstance in his case, where he was introduced to reading by Mrs. Auld.
After Mr. Auld discovered his wife tutoring the young slave, he put a stop to it. Douglass wrote of his master's warning as an instance of enlightenment.
Mr. Auld found out what was going on and at once forbade Mrs. Auld to instruct me further, telling her, among other things, that it was unlawful as well as unsafe to teach a slave to read. He said, if you give a nigger an inch, he will take an ell. A nigger should know nothing but to obey his master, to do as he's told to do. Learning would spoil the best nigger in the world. It was a new and special revelation, explaining dark and mysterious things with which my youthful understanding had struggled, but struggled in vain. I now understood what had been to me a most perplexing difficulty, to wit, the white man's power to enslave the black man. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. I set out with high hope, at whatever cost of trouble, to learn how to read.
Reading fueled Douglass's flight to freedom. Once in the North, his writing became a great weapon against the system of slavery.
Douglass's autobiographies are rich with philosophical insights about the psychology of both master and slave.
What is important about the literature of Frederick Douglass is simply this. If it were music, you would call it classical. If it were religious, you would call it timeless. But let's just say his language is as fresh as today's newspaper.
Frederick Douglass became one of the best-known Americans of the 19th century. He was a writer, newspaper editor, orator, American ambassador, and presidential advisor. But all of this began with the desire to read, inspired by overhearing his master's wife reading the Bible.
And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. When I read the Bible now, it's like, oh my God, you know, I can truly read this Bible without having to just spell all the words out, but, you know, I can truly read the Bible. And it just really makes a difference in your life to be able to read and to write.
Lavina attends classes at the Hub Center in St. Paul, which provides adults with basic education opportunities. With the center's committed staff and with hard work, adult learners like Lavina can improve their lives.
I went to the kitchen. It's just like you've been put in a box and you closed up. But once you begin to read, it's just like that box come open and you're coming out. And it's just like, oh my God, I'm free.
The Givens collection allows a reader to compare literature as it goes from the page to the screen. The negative images of the African American in the media began with D.W. Griffith's 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation. The film was based on the writing of racist author Thomas Dixon. Oscar Micheaux adapted his own writing for the screen and by 1920 became America's first black independent filmmaker. Other books that were made into movies show the link of film and literature.
Pinter and the whatchamacallit, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.